The ballot drop boxes are set up, election judges are being trained, and the countdown to Election Day is here. Just 2 weeks until the July 19th primary, candidates are making their final campaign push. Hello everyone, I'm Jason Newton and welcome to 11 TV Hill, a focus on Commitment 2022. Even with ballots and mailboxes, a lot of voters at both parties remain undecided. This morning, Dr. Malia Cromer from Goucher College and Dr. Roger Hartley from the University of Baltimore join us for a political roundtable. What's striking them about the frontrunners and the topics on Maryland voters' minds heading into the voters' booth? First though, let's take a look back at some of the biggest political stories from this week. The races are neck and neck, and the candidates are out in full force to win over voters. As Marylanders start to pay more at the gas pump, there's debate among the top 3 Democrat gubernatorial candidates over whether the state should implement a second gas tax holiday. Both Tom Perez and Wes Moore are against calling a special session in Annapolis, while Peter Franchot continues to push for it to happen.
We have plenty of money. We just are lacking the political consensus to do the right thing.
I think that there's certain responsibilities that we have, that the governor and frankly the comptroller is going to have on this issue. And what we need to see from them is a sense of partnership and leadership.
On the Republican side, allegations of campaign interference from Kelly Schultz's campaign over an ad paid for by Democrats against her opponent, Dan Cox.
As of today, they are spending more than $1 million in an attempt to help Dan Cox. The math is easy. Spend $1 million now and save $5 million by not having to face me in the general election.
They're here talking about something that they only have knowledge about. I don't have information. I'd like to see what they're talking about. I'd like to see the commercials. How do they know what the Democrats are doing? I think that's ridiculous.
The Democrat Governors Association that paid for the ad says they believe her opponent, Dan Cox, is a frontrunner and want to waste no time holding him accountable. From the state to the city, 3 candidates in Baltimore City State's Attorney's race share their plans to tackle crime in a debate. Marilyn Mosby was invited but chose not to attend. However, her policy of not prosecuting lower-level crime was a hot topic.
I would reverse this policy. You know, prosecuting people for low-level crimes does not automatically mean that you have to lock up a bunch of people.
We would reverse that policy day one. It's not about prosecution, it's about accountability.
We have to rescind that policy for 2 reasons. One, we don't have the ability to tell criminals that certain crimes are no longer criminal.
Now, let's get some insights from the experts. Joining us now is Dr. Malia Cromer, Director of the Sarah T. Hughes Center for Politics over at Goucher College, and Roger Hartley as well, Dean at University of Baltimore College of Public Affairs. Good to see you two again.
You as well.
It's a kind of exciting time right now a little bit.
Absolutely.
You had a poll that came out this week as we're taping here on Wednesday, and it showed something that's surprising to me, the number of undecideds right now when it comes to all elections. What's that all about?
There's a lot of undecideds in both the gubernatorial contest on the Republican and Democratic side, as well as the contest for comptroller and attorney general. Like looking at the Democratic side, clearly Franchot, Moore, and Perez have risen to the top as frontrunners, but more than a third of Democratic voters are still undecided at this point. You'll see certainly a push in the next couple weeks. You're going to see a whole flood of television advertisements, radio, and a lot of voter contact done by the campaigns to make sure that they can flip those undecided voters to, to their own voters.
Yeah, Roger, we were talking a little bit earlier. I mean, are people just unsatisfied, or is it just that summer lag? You know, you're thinking about summer vacation and not really thinking about an election right now.
Well, there's several things. You know, primaries are always lower turnout, but then, think about it. You have the economy, you have the election was moved, and so even candidates were uncertain as to where they were going to be in terms of the election day. And then it's vacation time for a lot of people, as you mentioned. It's really, really tough. And, of course, people are voting right now as we speak by mail and dropping off ballots right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what the final turnout numbers are. But I would bet they're low. Please, everyone, vote.
When we talk about issues, you mentioned a little bit there, I think money is on people's minds right now. Inflation is just, really getting to people. When you go to the gas pump, you just want to ride a bike at this point. Tell me about where that lies in all these races right now.
So our poll asked Maryland Democrats and Republicans, like, what were their major concerns?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of disagreement between Democrats and Republicans on a lot of different issues. But two issues actually rose to the top as a major concern for both, and that's the inflation and the cost of gasoline.
Yeah.
Another issue is crime and public safety was a key concern among those Democratic and Republican primary voters.
We talked a lot about the gas tax all over the last couple of days, and that's another one where people go both ways. What do people want right now? Sure, they want to pay less, but I'm guessing they want to go to the grocery store and not feel beat over the head at this point.
Well, absolutely. And the gas tax at the federal or state level can provide some relief, but then on the other hand, you have to pay the piper at some point in time too. It's less revenue to the state, and it can create deficits where the state right now in Maryland has had surpluses for the last couple years. So it could cripple or harm the ability of government to do its work. So there's trade-offs, but there is an emergency right now with $5 gas. I mean,
yeah, that's no good. I don't like that with a car that costs about $80 each time or more. D.C. has been very busy and very hot right now between the January 6th committee, also the Supreme Court with abortion, and then Congress as well with gun control. And I'm curious, even though this is in the federal eye, does it trickle down to Maryland elections?
I think it certainly does. And we asked about the insurrection as well as a broader question about democracy on our most recent poll. And I can tell you that Democrats and Republicans view the events of January 6th in starkly different terms. Democrats view it as an insurrection and an attack on democracy. Most Republicans view it as wrong, but not rising to the level of insurrection or attack on democracy. Another interesting caveat to all that is there's also a difference between Democrats and Republicans and how they view the results of the 2020 election. We asked them, and Democrats view it as Joe Biden won fair and square, but a majority of Republicans say that he won just by voter fraud. And all that together creates a really terrible situation, honestly, for American democracy, where most Democrats and most Republicans say that U.S. democracy is threatened rather than secure.
Okay, Roger, take me to the Supreme Court right now when it comes to abortion, because you heard in the fallout of it, the message was everyone go out and vote. This shows you why you need to vote. So tell me, do you think that trickles down to electorate? Do you look for who may have been supporting and not supporting when you're in the voters' booth?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of political science evidence that says that a really controversial Supreme Court decision where people are divided can lead to mobilization of people, to get them to turn out, to become active. There was the gun decision that came out, and then the overturning of Roe v. Wade is definitely going to energize voters, certainly on the left, who have cared about protecting that precedent for years, but also some on the right, too, who have been trying to whittle it away and even overturn it as they did successfully now. So we might see some of those undecideds move here on these issues.